Welcome, everyone. So, I am going to share my three, but really four favorite books on shamanism. And these are forgotten books in that not a lot of people know about them. And so I'm introducing them to a wider audience because they deserve that audience. So, the first book that I'm going to talk about is Cunning Folk and Familiar Spirits by Emma Wilby. This is a modern book. There was a period of time that I went through where I wasn't reading a lot of modern books, but some of the academic work that's been done about shamanism and witchcraft and magic over the past decade or two has really been phenomenal. And it really deserves some regard because it's bringing forward information in a way that we haven't had access to in the past. So there are a lot of people out there with, kind of odd PhDs wandering about that can tell us, things about a particular priest and his, ecstatic visions these days, which is just, fascinating to somebody like me. But this work its subtitle is Shamanistic Visionary Traditions in Early Modern British Witchcraft and Magic. So I will say that there is enormous amount of crossover between witchcraft, what we might consider cunning men or cunning, people traditions, and shamanism. In the West, we do tend to get sort of obsessed with labels. And so one of the things that she does in this book that I absolutely love, it's in one of the ending chapters, is that she sort of delineates the differences and the similarities between somebody that might be considered a shaman and somebody that might be considered a witch versus somebody that might be considered a cunning man, essentially a folk practitioner and seer in different traditions. And her argument that is that a lot of it depends on the location where you are and the traditions that emerge from that location. Basically, in one place, you might be considered a shaman, and another, you might be considered an oracle, and another, you might be considered a witch, which is, kind of blows things out of the water with a lot of our label obsession. So this is an academic work, and so it's going to be a little bit dense for people. That being said, it is one of the more readable academic works that I have read. There are some academics that are not very good writers, and Emma Wilby is a capable writer who has a thread of clarity that goes through the work. That being said, you probably only want to read a chapter at a time, but if you're interested in things like pacts, like how shamans work, about things like fairies and spirits and shamanic callings, all of that sort of stuff, and how they emerge throughout history. Emma Wilby is definitely a person and Cunning Folk and Familiar Spirits is something to genuinely check out. So I would like to believe that I have had a small role in bringing that man's work to a wider audience already. I've been recommending his work for probably about 15 years or something like that to my students. So um, this is, hopefully I'm pronouncing his name right, Holger Cowitz. I have two books of his. Um, Books. One is called Shamans, Healers, and Medicine Men, and the other is called Dreamtime and Inner Space. If you're looking for one of them, I think that they both are fantastic. However, most of my students tend to gravitate towards Dreamtime and Inner Space for some reason. Maybe it's just the title. Maybe it's cheaper and, in bookstores are more readily found these days. That definitely is a factor. But he was an interesting guy, and you can, read about all of the experiences that he has. He studied shamanism with all of these different cultures and all of these different places. He very much was the explorer archetype. But what was different from him, than a lot of other people, is that in reading his work, it was pretty clear that he has some capacities, sensitivities, psychic capacities himself. And so he was not just kind of like the white colonizer explorer who went in and, kind of looked at all of these um, shamanic cultures from an outlier perspective. He was able to relate with empathy and understanding in a way in which he was not from the outside looking in. And one of the interesting things in these books is that they are from the 80s, but they both are pretty readable, especially from somebody who is an anthropologist and, ethnopsychologist and, all that sort of good stuff. They aren't really terribly academic. That being said, it isn't going to be like kind of your quick new agey, sort of read either. They are both dense and packed with information. And so he has really, in Dreamtime and Inner Space, there are a lot of first person accounts of shamans and individuals who have had ecstatic experiences, paranormal experiences about their practices, about how they tend to others. And he's able to relate to this with an extraordinary amount of empathy. One of the things that he says, I believe in this book, in one of the books, is that he understands that he is an outsider. And this is sort of fascinating because he understands that he is a guest. He understands that, and that is not a thread of empathy, of understanding that is woven into a lot of the other shamanic literature that sort of made the foundation of what was popularized in the West. Um, and so this book, Shamans, Healers, and Medicine Men, is also really wonderful, but it comes from more of kind of an academic, you know, anthropology sort of study sort of thing. So he kind of takes a little bit of a back seat in this one. So there are still accounts and everything like that, but it's more focused on healing methods, and that really that the role of the shaman is for somebody to really look at life force within a person, how the person is living, how they are connected to reality, where they might experience disconnection. It was definitely after this book where I had kind of the revelation that shamanic work is all about connection and disconnection. And if you could see where disconnection lies in somebody, you can see where the lack of health is. So I am going to share a book that is always in my top 10 book list of books. And if you if you know me, you know that that is quite a feat. I am a very quick reader, and during a period of time, I did a little more than study. I'm out of that period now, but I still appreciate a good book. So, The Shamanic Healer by Malcolm Ritchie. So this book is rare in a lot of different ways. I hope that it is still easy to find because it is worthy of an audience. Malcolm Ritchie essentially did an internship and with an apprenticeship with Ikiko Osumi. Again, hope I'm pronouncing the name right. Please feel free to correct me. And so, what is so rare about this is that it offers an incredible amount of insight to a very powerful traditional healer in Japan, Asumi. And it also, there are a lot of rarities here that shamanic literature, specifically from Japan, is not that well known. Is we tend to have a lot of information that comes from different regions of the world, Hawaii, Tibet, Russia, certain regions of kind of like China and stuff like that. But that gets a little bit hairy because of a lot of political things, including the outlawing of a lot of traditional practices for periods of time. But um, I will say to have an account of a woman, a traditional healer, and especially somebody that has the power and the story that she does is incredibly rare. And so there is another book that is about Osumi, and I I find that the vantage point of Malcolm Ritchie to be um, far more compassionate and has a thread of humility. And he's willing to share his experiences, very much being an apprentice, living in close quarters with this woman over a period of time. Um, and so it is really a fantastic read. It gives you insight into a different facet of shamanism than is previously known about. And also, I would also say that there are certain books for me, and your mileage may vary, but that they are sort of talismans. They find me at exactly the right time to open up a path, a portal, a way for me to receive essentially an energetic transmission. There are certain people whose energy and power and capacities are so intact, so congruent, like that, even though it is being related through Malcolm Ritchie, you can get a sense of her essence, a sense of her power. And the people that have read it, some of them have reported similar sort of, energetic transmissions or feelings of, at the very least, oh wow, this is really interesting. This is a lot different than a lot of the other shamanic accounts, a lot of the other accounts of traditional healers I've read, or some people I've just heard from are just excited to hear from a woman practitioner. So I hope that you really enjoy these books. If you've read them, feel free to put down some comments about them, about what you enjoyed about them. And thank you for listening.